Hi, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live event. We're so happy you can join us today. I am Tracy Layney. I'll be your moderator for today, and my day job is that I'm the SVP and Chief HR Officer for Levi, Strauss & Co., which you probably can tell by what I'm wearing, and I'm really, really excited for today's conversation. As some of you probably know, in 2020, at the very beginning of the pandemic, a bunch of chief HR officers from Accenture, Lincoln Financial, ServiceNow, and Verizon launched this amazing platform called People+Work Connect to literally address the economic crisis that was facing workers around the world. This initial first incarnation of People+Work Connect was designed to put people back to work. If you remember back, those 20 months ago, which what was happening in early 2020, we were facing a crisis of employees being laid off across companies while other employers were actually hiring at scale. And so this group of CHROs, along with our partner Accenture, came together to build this amazing platform that helped connect the workers who were displaced with the companies that were hiring. And there was so much success. Over 280 companies around the globe participated in this from 94 countries and ended up posting across the companies 390,000 roles. So it was a tremendous way to get people who were impacted by the pandemic back to work and back to work quickly. Today, we're going to talk to you about the very next stage of People+Work Connect and the exciting incarnation that's upon us now. As everybody knows, most employers are hiring right now. There's a lot of demand for talent across the globe in all sorts of different jobs. But we have a new set of challenges that we're facing, and maybe they're not even new, but they're certainly ones that we're confronting, that even despite this high demand for talent, we have a lot of untapped workers. And so we're here today to talk to you about the next incarnation of People+Work Connect and how it can connect employers who are hiring with potentially untapped talent sources that maybe have been traditionally underserved in the workplace. And I'm excited to be here with my new leadership team, those of us who are in HR, who are running this next phase of People+Work Connect. So I want to spend some time introducing you to that wonderful leadership team, my partners in this journey, as well as some of the research that's being done that really illuminates this challenge we're facing and how we can address it. So who you're going to hear from today, I'm really excited. You're going to hear from Colin Anderson, who is in HR digital transformation and people analytics leader at Accenture. You're going to hear from Pedro Suriel, who's the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at Raymond James. And we also have with us Carrie Royer, who heads Global Talent Acquisition at Verizon. She is here representing Sam Hammock, who is the new EVP for Verizon, who's also part of our leadership team. So we're really thrilled to have this panel here to talk to us today and share what we're doing with People+Work Connect. But before we dive into what the platform is, we want to get some background. And I could not be more delighted to have Professor Joe Fuller, who's the professor of the management practice and co-lead of the Harvard Business School's project on managing the future of work. Joe is going to start by sort of setting the stage for us, for talking to us about this notion of the hidden worker and untapped talent that we are attempting to go after in this next phase of People+Work Connect. So I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, we're so excited to have you joining us today, and would love you to just orient us to sort of what we talk about when we talk about untapped talent. What does that mean, and what can you share with us from the research that you just completed along with Accenture and the Harvard Business School?
Well, Tracy, I'm delighted to be with you and to offer some thoughts that'll be helpful to the people behind People+Work Connect, which is a fabulous initiative. We were interested in finding out what was driving declining workforce participation in the United States and also in the UK and Germany. And we started to study who's captured in the unemployment numbers and what's the size of the population of people that go beyond the nameplate unemployment rate and what places them there. All the aggregate numbers we get about unemployment are essentially about as useful as the Dow Jones 30 Industrials is to picking a stock. We wanted to segment the population of the people who are outside the workforce and understand what was keeping them outside. And what we found is there's a very large population in the US, it's about 27 million people, who are regularly screened off from consideration from work by the processes by which companies seek out applicants and take applicants and turn them into a limited number of candidates. And we call them hidden from the work from employers. They're not hiding, they're being acted upon by things like ATS systems and the filter and ranking mechanisms in ATS systems, which exclude large numbers of people who might otherwise be qualified for consideration as an attractive candidate for just one or two reasons.
So, I mean, those are big numbers of people that are being, as you say, hidden, or I think words that we often use is untapped, right? It's literally pools of talent that someone in my role as the head of HR either doesn't, is being hidden from me by things that choices I may have made and somehow how I use tools, et cetera, or that it's just untapped talent. So as we think about where we are today and knowing how much demand companies have for talent, right? We know that especially this time of year, seasonality, it's hard to fill roles. What can companies do today or tomorrow to reveal this talent to themselves and to make sure that we're tapping into these talent pools that have been traditionally underserved?
Well, in the short term, it would involve things like revisiting the way you're ranking and filtering candidates in your ATS system so that you don't have what we describe in our writing as negative filters that are excluding candidates exclusively because of some judgment that is basically inferential about the candidate. So it could be as simple as stopping to requiring a university or college degree for candidates who apply for a job. But it could also be things like visiting the degree to which you're relying on filters like a continuity of employment filter. Almost half the companies in the United States drop an applicant out of consideration if they have a gap in their work history of more than 6 months. Now, I used the word inferential a second ago. Why would a company choose that? Well, first of all, a company is just deciding what makes any applicant relatively more attractive to another one. So the company isn't saying we absolutely would never consider such a person, but they're dropping them down the rankings. And since most companies interview a very small percentage of the people who apply, a highly qualified worker who drops down the rankings for a reason that's basically based on an assumption that variable indicates something that will make them less attractive. So someone could look at someone who outside the workforce for 6 months and say, well, maybe they don't have great self-efficacy or drive, or boy, it doesn't seem like the previous people they worked with really rallied to the cause to get them a job. And those are plausible inferences, but they're inferences. You could be out of the workforce for 6 months because you had a problem pregnancy, because one of your parents died and you had to find a care arrangement for the survivor, because you had surgery, or you had a spouse that had surgery, or a kid with a sudden medical condition or other event. So revisit those things. And the second thing is make sure your job descriptions really just focus on the attributes of a worker that will make them a success. Too many job descriptions now are too long. They're not refined often enough. They're laden with nice-to-have skills or skills that have kind of accreted over the last 10 or 15 years into a job description. They've just never been edited out. Make them crisp, sharp, and focused on the skills that allow people to thrive in your environment, and not so busily looking for things that might disqualify them for some reason.
That is such helpful advice, Joe. And I think especially coming out of this pandemic, I can imagine the number of, just use your example, the number of prospective employees who have gaps in their resume, right? Think about how we all people had to take care of family members or found themselves laid off, right? Or for lots of other reasons. I think this problem has become exacerbated. And if that's an example of something we're filtering for, I think we're all going to miss out on a lot of great talent. And to that point, I want to ask you a little bit about what you think companies are missing by having some of these ways that we've potentially maybe hired in the past. I mean, you specifically just said you want to look for people who can thrive in your organization. As you've gotten to dig into this hidden or this untapped workforce, what do you think we're actually missing by perpetuating this problem by how we've been hiring?
Well, the first and most important, as you touched on, Tracy, is we're just artificially constraining the pool of candidates. And I know very few employers right now who are thrilled to death with how many inbound applications they've got. So broadening the aperture on who you're looking for may give you candidates for filling positions you're finding it hard to fill. The second thing, though, you're getting is the opportunity to engage workers that have found it difficult to get back in the workforce. We found that the typical hidden worker only succeeds in getting a job offer 1.7% of the time. So if they submit 50 applications, they're going to get less than one job offer. And that's very frustrating and drives them out of applying for jobs or types of jobs, we found. But imagine you take someone who's faced those adversity, those challenges, and now you're offering them an opportunity. And that can be done in many, many instances with fairly modest accommodations you can learn about by partnering with, let's say, a community-based organization that works with that subpopulation of hidden workers. What we found is that companies that had specific programs designed to accommodate hidden workers, it could be veterans, it could be people with a criminal conviction, it could be caregivers who have ongoing care responsibilities at home that have to factor into the way they plan their hours or business travel. It could be people that have not in training or education, so-called NEETs, that are going to need some remedial work before they're job ready. When you give them that chance, the companies that have done that consistently found significant 50, 60, 70% better performance in terms of engagement, attendance, productivity, lower turnover. So we all know that workers who feel invested in feel greater commitment to their employer. Now, the final thing you're going to get is better pools of diversity, because many hidden workers have a collinearity with communities of color and with women. So a company that's trying to really commit itself to enhance diversity is very well served to use tapping hidden worker pools as one of their mechanisms for getting that more diverse workforce.
That is so great to hear. And I completely agree. Again, as somebody who spends a lot of time, especially these days, thinking about just how do we get enough workers into our stores, our distribution centers, our offices, and then really has an intention, as so many of our companies do now, to look at our diversity, representation, our inclusivity, and just all different types of workers. I think this is an area that I would encourage all of us, especially those companies who are joining us today, to really think about and challenge how we've traditionally thought about hiring and how we proactively look at these untapped pools of talent, which is a great segue to our panel to talk about People+Work Connect, because this platform that we are designing in its current incarnation is really meant to do that. And so with that, I'm going to start turning over to my colleagues to get some more information on People+Work Connect. And I'm going to start with Pedro. Just basic question: what is People+Work Connect, and what can this platform do to address some of the very challenges that Joe just articulated?
Thank you, Tracy. As you mentioned before, People+Work Connect started as a platform that was connecting business to business, to share or organizations that had demand with organizations that were providing supply. So as we evolve and we talk about this untapped talent, People+Work Connect will continue to be a cross-industry global initiative that leverages this free platform again, to help connect companies with community-based organizations who represent this untapped talent that you and Joe just talked about, right? So, it's about connecting companies that have talent demand with organizations that are committed to working with this untapped talent to help them get work and put more people back to work. So that's the evolution of People+Work Connect. It's a connector between organizations and community-based organizations and companies seeking talent.
Yeah, I think that was so great to hear, and it was great to hear Joe reference that there are these community organizations that exist to do just that, and I think it's incumbent on us to help connect those organizations to employers, and that's what we're excited about in this next phase. But Colin, I'm going to turn it over to you now. How does People+Work Connect work? Like, how does it work?
So at the end of the day, what this is, we've used the word connections so many times, and that's really what this is about. How do we use a platform? This is a free platform open to employers and organizations who are representing the hidden worker or representing people that are looking for the work. So again, it's organization to organization or organization to company. And really leveraging a lot of what Professor Fuller talked about before. It's about how do we collect and how do we ask for the minimum set of what is required to explain from the view of an employer, what am I looking for? Location, skill categories, relative level of experience. Can the job be done remotely? The fewest number of things that we can to give you a broad shape of what am I looking for and how many of that am I looking for? We ask for the same information for the organizations representing people, same minimum set of information. And basically what the platform allows those on it to do is to enable and make those connections. I've got a group of people here like this that I'm representing. You're looking for talent like this. Let's come together, let's talk, let's build that connection. Critically, there is no PII, there's no personal identifiable information on the platform. This is not an ATS or a recruiting system where we're looking at the individual themselves. But really, again, it's about describing what do I need with what do I have and what am I representing so we can make those connections, ultimately trying to drive friction out of the system, make these connections quicker, richer to bring these organizations together.
That's great. That's so helpful. And I love that we've found taking the learnings from the first year of this work and really applied them to this next phase. And speaking of the learnings, Carrie, I'm going to ask you, Verizon was an early participant in even the last phase of People+Work Connect. And as you think about the future, right, for People+Work Connect and connecting with this untapped talent, like why is Verizon so committed to this, and what are your hopes for this next phase, and what do you think other companies can gain?
Sure, thank you. Well, I'll start off by saying, Verizon is super proud of being one of the founding companies of People+Work Connect. Helping to stand it up was really a passion project for many of the members of our HR team who, helped build microsite materials. We posted our open roles to the platform. We helped to create, knowledge sharing assets for HR leaders across industries. And our motivations for jumping in right away really centered around building a solution that helped impacted workers at the time, get back to work and really create a precedent for how the HR community can make a bigger impact when leaders work across, organizational borders. From a business perspective, it was also really great to be able to access the amazing talent on the platform by posting our open jobs. And as I think about how the platform is continuing to evolve, bringing on, community partners, I'm really excited about the opportunity to partner in that way and, expand our access to more of that untapped and underserved talent.
That's great. I love that you've had both experiences, and I think there's so much that companies can be gained by being part of this platform. And not just companies. Pedro, I know you're working really closely with a lot of those community organizations who specifically work with different types of these talent pools. And I'd love to hear from you and your discussions with the companies we've already been working with. What can People+Work Connect give to these organizations who are trying to get folks to work?
Great, Tracy. We're currently in the process of reaching out and partnering, collaborating with new organizations like Upwardly Global and Opportunity at Work, just to name a few. But one of the primary benefits is this, notion of access to connections, again, between these organizations and companies who want to hire and have demand for hiring. So again, the critical component is just access to information and resources and understanding where the demand is for specific skill sets. In addition to that access, there are other benefits that come by participating on the platform. There's a knowledge exchange, which allows organizations and companies to share information and content so that we can continuously learn. And this will be a continuous evolving process as we learn from one another, as we learn and pivot from the previous work that the founders made to where we're taking it. The other benefits is the use of microsites, which will give job seekers an opportunity to quickly identify opportunities. And then from an HR talent perspective, it helps to lighten the load because now you have individuals who have an understanding of where the demand is and how their skills fit. For organizations who are looking to diversify their talent, it's a great resource to get into this untapped talent to really expand your sourcing pools and your sourcing options. And then the last piece that I would mention is with equipping organizations, community organizations, with additional insights and tools, by connecting with companies who are hiring. What are the trends? What are the observations? How can we best support this untapped talent as they're seeking employment based on the relationships and connections that are being made on the platform?
That's great. I love that there's so many opportunities for connection across things like the microsites, sort of the knowledge base that's being created in the tool as well. So it's not just about potential opportunities and sort of resources, but also how to support that, which I think is really, really important. We have a little bit less than 10 minutes and we are getting some questions in the chat. And so one of the questions we've gotten, and Carrie, I'm going to send this to you because you have some experience with this, is it's great to hear that there's support from HR, but what about other C-level executives and how they're engaged? We know that, the Second Chance Coalition and CEOs from other leading companies have been engaged. I'm curious about your experience at Verizon or what you've seen in terms of the broader engagement of your organization outside of HR.
Yeah, thanks. And what I will say is, you kind of alluded to this earlier, as we just think about the sheer challenges right now with the supply of talent and, not meeting the demand for jobs and this goal around diversifying our talent pool, it's really not a choice to not be connected. And the C-suite, certainly at Verizon and many other companies that I talk to, are fully on board with these types of initiatives. I can call out one in particular. Verizon has joined the Second Chance Business Coalition that is, specifically focused on tapping into this talent and sharing the best practices across organizations, because it's critical that we reach the talent and, as Professor Fuller said, that we create the right systems and processes and tools that don't screen them out and that are allowed to be seen to the recruiting team and to the organization.
That's really helpful, and just something that you were saying, and also made me think of something Pedro was just saying about how part of what this platform is intended to do is also to make jobs more transparent to potential workers who may, with a 1% chance of getting an offer, may feel completely continuously screened out, right? And so how is it helpful for folks who are looking for work, as well as the companies, as well as some of the organizations who might be supporting these untapped pools of talent? There also have been some questions that have come in about existing talent, right? Though, so we understand this is about getting people into jobs, but we also know that there are folks who are in companies right now who may not feel fully supported or being mentored. And so, Pedro, what would you say about that? And how do you think about how this work we're doing and how we're thinking about it could help companies think about how they might mentor existing talent of all ages, right? Young talent, but not just young talent, and their own talent pools that already exist.
As many organizations scramble for talent right now, I always say, retention is one of the key levers that we currently have at our disposal. And in order to retain talent, we need to seek to understand what are the drivers and what are the interests of our existing workforce. So mentoring is a great initiative, a great way of connecting with individuals to seek to understand what are the aspirations that individuals have, where are some challenges or roadblocks that they may be facing, and how we as leaders can help them overcome those challenges and roadblocks. The other piece is to help them look at landscape of the business and the overall organization, where they might need to pivot to develop new skills, to expand their network, and also peer-to-peer mentoring is another important component to this. I participate in mentoring initiatives, and we have mentoring circles, and it's basically a couple of mentors with several mentees, and I find it very helpful because what we're seeing there, what I see there, is that a lot of the learning and sharing of information is happening peer-to-peer. And they share their stories and they share their experiences, and they become their solid network. So, I would encourage organizations and individuals to really think about how they're connecting with their existing talent and making sure that we're understanding where their needs are, but most importantly, providing access to current leaders, providing access to information, providing access to resources that allow them to see where the next opportunity may exist within the organization and how to continue to evolve across all levels, right? You mentioned, Tracy, it's not just the young worker, but the experienced worker who may want to pivot as they start to thinking about transitioning or sunsetting in their career.
That is such a great point, that it's at all stages of your career, right? And I completely agree with you about making sure we're retaining folks we have now by giving them growth opportunities in addition to looking to hire new folks. Joe, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and then about that mentorship. But then also we have a question that's about, for those who are listening who may feel that they're hidden, that they're untapped, what advice would you give them to sort of navigate their way so they aren't hidden and they can be seen by employers too?
Well, Tracy, let me first of all build on a couple of things Pedro said. There is the spot market for labor is a risky place to rely on for talent. It never more so than today because it's just simply stocked out. We're talking about, we have a supply chain problem for low value added manufacturers. We got a supply chain problem for talent in the United States. And would you rather make an investment on something based on a personnel file or a resume? When you've got a personnel file, someone shows up for work, they're engaged, they've got what their performance has been and maybe what some of the skills deficits or performance deficits have been. That allows you to build a much more customized approach and keep that resident knowledge never more important in an era of high turnover, to keep that tacit knowledge of the organization, the history with customers, with suppliers, with colleagues. Now, one thing I have some research coming out, I would call it a coming attraction, but I don't know how attractive it's going to be to many people, which is, I think our listeners might benefit from, which is companies, Pedro used a keyword, mentorship. And companies have lots of policies about providing mentorship, clear feedback. But what this research shows is, particularly at lower levels in the company, lower pay grades, less seniority, there's a lot of talk, but there's way too little walk. Actual execution of feedback, clarity of feedback, clarity of steps people can take to advance their career prospects. Now, let me come back quickly to your question about what candidates can do. The first thing most candidates have to do is, at the first stage of your employment effort, you cannot act as if a human being is going to take a look at your application and exercise any judgment about it. An algorithm is doing that. The algorithm has been programmed, been informed by human beings who are looking for good candidates. They're not trying to exclude lots of people, but to try to take what's potentially a big pile of submissions and get it down to a manageable number of people to be actually considered. they're whittling it down really fast using blunt edge filters. So realizing that that's what's happening, have your application as closely as possible match what the application says. If you were a program director in your old job and the new company you're thinking about applying to calls it a project manager, just call yourself a project manager. Look at the key, use the words that are in the application. Don't add value. This is the opposite of being a creative writer. Just plagiarize it, assuming you're not misleading the employer, which would be a serious error. Realize there are things like continuity employment, and maybe you put in an entry for that period. It's not a false entry that you're working somewhere. You're saying, dealing with health condition of parents. Then the gap is filled, and the AI, because it doesn't look for taking care of parents at home as part of the job description, but at least you've eliminated something that filters you out. One last thing, check LinkedIn. If it's a LinkedIn level job, check the incumbents in the job and see, are there 2 or 3 things here that they're all talking about that I don't have, or I do have and I didn't mention. If I didn't have it, can I backfill some of it? If I did have, now you know things that the employer actually values.
Oh my gosh, all such great advice from everybody, but especially just leaving it on that note that we get to, the folks can take away what they can do to make sure they're not being screened out, as well as what companies can do so we can rethink this, and how do we partner with folks who actually can connect us more closely to this untapped talent, which is exactly what People+Work Connect is designed to do. And we're really excited about this next phase of this platform. We hope you all will join us and come and learn more. We'll make sure that all that, how to go find out is available. It's definitely peopleworkconnect.accenture.com. And I just have to thank the panel, Joe, Colin, Pedro, and Carrie, for a lovely, very, very instructive discussion. I learned so much from our time together today. I hope all of you did as well. And I really hope all of you will come join us as we help continue to put people to work. We're really excited about this next chapter, and we want to be a part of it with you. Thanks so much.